I can assure you, I have too many blue art supplies because it is scientifically proven to be the best color ever. Hey y'all, it's Alex and welcome back to my channel. Boy, do I have too many blue art supplies. While going through all of this, I decided that I was going to be splitting up my teals from my blues, so this video could have had more art supplies in it. Imagine that. So jumping right into the meat and potatoes of this piece, you'll notice that I sped it up quite a lot. My tripod, I didn't realize until after I'd already recorded this video, slowly swung further down towards the bottom right corner through the entirety of at least the sketch part and the line art part of this video, so we're gonna just breeze right through this. For these pieces, the last couple of them I've done were more illustrative, more focused on backgrounds. However, since I had so many utensils that I had to use here, I wanted to make sure there were enough places that I'd be able to use them and actually have them be more than just accents to each other. I wanted to make sure that everything had a little bit of its own place. And the only way I could figure to do that with blue art supplies was a coral reef. That was like the first thing that came to my head when I was like, okay, I have all of this stuff, how do I jam it into one image? So I figured that I've gone a little bit more subversive on my last couple of them. I mean, I did a green desert, so I can let this one slide and just go for a straight up blue ocean. And besides, I love the chance to draw sharks. Sharks are some of my favorite animals, and I used to want to become a marine biologist to study them. So we have a mako shark, an Esurus oxyrhynchus most likely, a nurse shark, I don't remember the scientific name for that one off the top of my head, and then a frilled shark, which is Chamidosolacus. Don't remember the species name, but Chamidosolacus is so fun to say, so I know that one off the top of my head. And then back in the distance, there's like the shadow of another shark. I'm pretty sure if it got closer would probably be a great white or a bull shark. It is more blunt nosed. And then the whale shark, because I absolutely adore whale sharks, but I don't remember their scientific name off the top of my head either. Since I wanted to have all of these sharks in the image, I figured that this mer woman would also be a mer shark, which is why she has 5 sets of gills, the 2 on her neck, well, the 2 pairs on her neck, and then the 3 on her torso. The kind of story that I gave her is that she's calling all of these sharks in with some sort of magical power to bring her all of these jewels that they find on the sea floor. Like the nurse shark is bringing her this amulet, and the mako shark has like a bag of coin that's spilling out, and I like the little crab that's reaching up to grab one of the coins. And the frilled shark has like this weird scepter that it is bringing to this mer woman. Making sure that I was able to have enough in this piece to use all the colors, but also making it not look cluttered was a fun balance to bring. The amount of subject matter down in the bottom part of the image is balanced out, at least in my opinion. It's balanced out by the fact that the top of the image doesn't really have a whole lot going on, and that kind of reflects a lot of the actual structure of the ocean, so I figured that was fitting. In the coral reef, I mostly included tube sponges and at least my approximation of staghorn coral, but there's also a lot of anemones, a basket sponge, and a big sea fan with a little flamingo tongue on it, which is a type of crustacean, I believe. Going right into the coloring, I wanted to make sure that the skin was the lightest just because your eye would be drawn into that, and I have a whole bunch of dark tone blues. I also wanted to make sure it was really bright because I wanted to make the ocean color more dark behind her. So for most of the body, I used my favorite highlighter color, but then I realized that I have an Ohuhu marker that is the exact same color but less textured. Like, the highlighter goes on to watercolor paper a little bit grainy. The Ohuhu marker is the same color but manages to be softer. At least it doesn't leave as much of a texture. So I was able to get a really good texture on the face but squeeze in like 2 colors for the price of 1 area. I feel like I really utilized my Ohuhu markers in like the most places. Obviously, in this whole group, I have the most Copic markers because when I was first starting to collect Copic markers, I leaned really heavily towards the blues because, I mean, my favorite color and all. And then a lot of utensil sets tend to come with a lot of blues in the first place. So they're the things that I just have collected over and over. I feel like those were the ones that had the most appealing colors to me for whatever reason, and they're also my newest utensils, so I'm just kind of addicted to using them right now. Unlike in most of my pieces, I found it really easy to use the acrylic paint. I had a hard time figuring out what paint I wanted to use for the background and what paint I wanted to use for the rock texture that's below the coral reef. I decided that it would make a lot more sense to use the acrylic paint for the rock texture since you can kind of get some actual physical texture from it, whereas, I mean, watercolor makes more sense to use for water texture. I did go in with, I believe, one of my Posca pens, one of my Molotow markers to give it some dark spots because this blue paint is actually very bright in person. I don't know if that comes across exactly in the video, but it's a surprisingly bright paint. While usually the stone wouldn't exactly be something that you'd want to pop through, I kind of enjoy that it is, you know? Out of all the small little details, I think the clam is probably my favorite thing in the background other than like the little sharks out in the distance. Because it's just such a small piece, but I wish I would have made it bigger. It's such a cute design. Plus the little butterfly fish, sturgeon fish that's hiding inside of the barrel sponge. I wish I would have put more of them in there. In the beginning of this piece, I wanted to make sure that I went into the background first, so that way I'd be able to have the main sharks and the merlady's tail kind of go outside of the border of this piece. And of course that meant that I had to spend a lot of time with this Ecoline watercolor. I'm pretty sure it's Ecoline 533 Indigo, and it's actually my newest my newest bottle of Ecoline watercolor. I also, up at the top, I mixed it with, I think it was Ecoline watercolor 578, but I'm not sure. Just so that way it would be a little bit more bright towards the top where you'd actually get sunlight permeating through. After this piece got finished, I decided that the bottom of the piece wasn't dark enough, so I went back in with a dark Copic marker to give the bottom a little bit more shadow, and that really helped bring the merlady out from the background. I tried something different with the watercolor at the very top. I tried leaving white space. I don't tend to do that, but I wanted to make sure that it was clear that there is the surface there and not just like an unknown amount of distance between this coral reef and the surface. I do go back in with a white pen later to get a little bit more texture because I don't leave enough at the beginning. And I think that's really effective. I wish I would have left even more white space. That's something that I'm going to have to work on. And I mean, highlights are something that I'm still trying to get comfortable with. I'm very comfortable with shadows, but highlights have never really been my strong suit. And we're going to be working on that in the near future, I guess, eventually. Who knows? Since I removed all of the teals from this segment where I would have had some of the more green blues in here, I feel like that is both a service and a disservice to this piece. On the one hand, it means there were about 20 less items that I had to shoehorn into this piece somehow. On the other hand, everything in this piece has almost the exact same tone, so there's very little to break up the monotony. I feel like at the end of this piece, the merwoman kind of blends in she blends in a little bit too much. There's nothing to really make her stand out differently from the rest of the piece in the same way that some of my others have. Like, for example, in the all purple piece, I considered taking out the more pink tone ones and just leaving in the more true purples or the more blue purples. However, I decided to make a division. The background was going to be the more true purples and blue tones, and the character herself was going to be more of the pink tones. That made her stand out from the background, and also made sure that there was enough places to use each of the supplies without making it look out of order or random. However, in this piece, there really wasn't that balance. Having her have the really light skin and one of the lightest colors in this entire piece helps bring her out from the background, but I wish I would have left more white in this piece. Like, I think I should have left her hair as a light color. However, I had several dark Copic colors left to use by the time I got to her hair, and I just wanted to be done with them. I didn't want to figure out a different place to put them. We're just gonna slap them in there, and that's gonna be that, and it's gonna be fine. It makes her a little too dark, and it's a little unfortunate. It's the same with her tail. I wish I would have picked a different color. Just because it's a little bit too close in value to the background. Later, adding in the darker color over top of the background helps a little bit. However, she still blends in. But I guess speaking from an evolutionary point of view, that makes sense. Organisms living in water have to make sure that they blend in, otherwise they're at risk of being eaten. So from an evolutionary standpoint, it makes a little bit of sense, I think. During the framing of these shots, I had a whole lot of trouble of keeping my camera from swinging in random directions. I don't know what the deal is, and I'm still trying to figure that out, but it's been better in the past few videos that I've filmed. But I had a hard time getting all of my utensils in frame, and also keeping a good amount of arm space for me on my desk. My desk is unfortunately a little smaller now that I've moved. I kept bumping into all of my Copics on the side during the filming of this, so that was a little annoying. But other than the fact that all of my Sharpies and Poscas are up above the extent of my camera above, there's a whole lot more gel pens and glitter pens off to the left. My desk was an absolute mess during the filming of this, just because all of the utensils needed to be out and available. There were also some colors in this where I swatched them and I decided that I didn't want to include them in this piece. For example, I have a custom acrylic ink wash that I made for a piece that I will not share yet. It was a piece that I did for a project for my only art class that I've taken since middle school. And you'll be able to see that in a video hopefully very soon. I've been meaning to record it, but I haven't gotten around to it. It's on the border of blue, green, and blue, and I decided that the Mako Shark needed to have a different tone to it, and I couldn't decide whether or not I wanted to use a true blue lightened ink or the wash, and I decided that the wash would make better sense, and also it would at least make the Mako Shark stand out a little bit more. So I went in with that. For the frilled shark, the Chamidosilacus, just to give me a reason to say it again, I mixed one of my Ecoline watercolors with my Fine Tech Blue Tint metallic watercolor. It's an absolutely gorgeous color, and it kind of like shimmers when you shift the paper in the light. The only problem is I didn't realize that I got outside the lines a little bit, so when I went back over with the Copic marker, the places where I went outside the lines actually don't cover as well, so that's a little unfortunate. At some point in working on the face, I tried having, since she has two sets of eyes, I tried having her bottom set of eyes looked towards the nurse shark, and her top set of eyes looked towards the Mako Shark, and it just looked so wrong. Like, I thought it would look kind of cool to have her be looking at both of them, but it felt weird. So I decided to go back in with my dusty blue-gray Molitor marker and just blot out her eyes a little bit. I started off very light with this ink wash for the Mako Shark and kind of worked my way up to the color that I wanted him to be. When I first made this wash, I intentionally made it really light just because of the piece that it was getting used on, but it ended up being a pretty good amount of color for the Mako Shark. And as you can see up at the top, I tried going in with the white pen, but it doesn't really stick to the watercolor. It just didn't appear well. I tried also going in and doing some shading on the bottom of the Mako Shark, but the Oahu marker that I picked was too dark. So I took one of my white gel pens and just kind of like smudged the white ink over the Oahu marker to make sure that it was the right tone of blue that I wanted. I went around in the background and kind of added some other fish. Like around the whale shark, I added the little shadows of some pilot fish that usually follow them around, and a little sunfish, and maybe like some barracudas or tarpons out behind the nurse shark. Some of the areas that I originally did in the dark color of the watercolor also lightened after the fact, so After letting it sit for a day, I came back and decided that I really needed to go back in with a darker color, which really helps. I also realized after I finished filming the first day for this, I didn't use the rhinestones, which I was so excited to bring back since I don't have any green ones, and we had to skip those for the last piece. So I decided to go in and bling up some of the items that the sharks were bringing her. Also, some of the jewelry she was actually wearing as well. I do go in with a healthy glob of just normal Elmer's glue from a glue stick on the tip of my X-Acto knife, but after it's had a good few minutes to dry, I go back in and I scrape at least a good chunk of the stuff that is still visible outside of the gem. If you push the gem in and there's at least a little bit latching around the sides, it means that it's going to stay for longer because there's a nice seal around the edges. While I was doing my all teal piece, I realized that there was a blue Copic marker that didn't make it into the blue pile, and it was accidentally sorted over there. So I went back in and I recolored in the eel, which just didn't feel right being the lightest part of this piece, and I think it looks much better being the color it is now. Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed seeing me use all of my blue art supplies. I have a poll in the top right corner for which piece is next. We have only got a few, so here's hoping we make it to the end of the series by the end of this year. If you'd feel so inclined, hit that subscribe button and check me out on my other social media handles. Thanks, and I'll see y'all in the next one.